Welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways. I'm in yet another hotel room in yet another state doing yet more travel. It's been quite an adventure on this run. So today, started yesterday, Freckled Liberty, who is quite an awesome person on Twitter, even though I'm not a libertarian and I don't actually agree with a lot of the economic bases of morality that libertarians have. But she's a really great person, right? So this guy, R.S. Hirsch, my tweets are all typos at R_S_HIRSCH. I would link in the description, but I blocked him because he's an asshat. And this video is going to involve him being a little bit of an asshat. So Freckled Liberty is talking about the libertarian arguments against abortion, that you are denying a human being rights. So, Mr. Hirsch, in his weird reasoning, decides that this is completely, bogus. So he replies with, "Back to thinking things without brains have rights." So I replied, because this is one of those issues that has 2 or 3 significant factors of importance. Okay, abortion is primarily and fundamentally not a debate about a woman's right to choose or a woman's right. Fundamentally, it's a question of definitions of humanity and whether or not you're going to grant rights to humans. So there's some really key concepts in here, and the questions you have to ask are pretty important. So I asked, I'm like, this seems weird. Just out of curiosity, what number of neurons do you think are required to have rights? Can you quantify this? And provide me with evidence. Now, remember, this person says things without brains. So, his response to me is, it's not a biology question. Rights are derived from action with intent. So, first off, we know this guy's a complete, lunatic, because action with intent doesn't... I can make some really solid arguments that most humans under 18 months don't do that. So let's hold off on that weird thing. So he says, when that happens, then self-ownership rights are imbued. I'm going to have to get back to self-ownership because it's another one of those fundamental libertarian fallacies that the definition of humanity is not a commodity that can be owned by itself. That's not an adequate definition of humanity. It's not a good definition of humanity. It's not about ownership. Liberty is not ownership, okay? There's some really weird stuff in there. But, so I called him out on it. I said, dude, you're the one who specified brain. You didn't say mind. You didn't say consciousness. You didn't say intent. And who made you the deity who gets to determine this definition, this requirement, Before you get too far down this road, realize that I know a little bit about psychology and stuff. So I'm like, prove to me that you can objectively measure your criteria once you define them. His response to me in that one is to start calling me names. Pretty much, he calls me names. He's like, well, some beings can do this action with intent with 10 to the 11th number of neurons, and some require 10 to the 12th power number of neurons. And I'm like, that's an order of magnitude. That's the difference between 100 and 1,000, 1,000 and 10,000. 100,000 and a million. That's a lot. That's a big difference. It's not the difference between 11 and 12. And so I called him out on that. I'm like, once again, you're acting like an uneducated 1950s behaviorist who thinks that all of humanity is defined biologically and that it's mechanical, clockwork people. You know, and the difference between 10 to the 11th and 10 to the 12th is a lot more than it sounds like. That's not how that's not how consciousness works, and if you're going to use math that way, be careful. Math is hard, use it wisely. So he just goes all out. Horrible, you don't understand the concept, you don't understand, you need to take classes on comprehension, and he gets very insulting very quickly, which is fine. I mean, I'm not the nicest person to have this debate with. Anyway, you know, he doesn't explain his criteria at any point in time. He keeps saying biological words, brains, neurons, okay, development stages, biological and then he keeps telling us in this thread that it's not biology. And so he doesn't know what he's trying to say. You know, I think that he's trying to say that there is some mechanistic, mechanical, biological, observable, physics, mechanical, Newtonian set of actions or circumstances that defines humanity and consciousness. And that is when you can't do an abortion or a killing, okay? Because at that point, you've demonstrated humanity. It may not be a fetus, it may be a person, you know? I don't know what he would do with Down syndrome or severe autism. I have no idea. His logic, he defends his logic very stringently, which makes me think that he'd be perfectly willing to kill a retarded 5-year-old. That's his logic, and he defends it really assiduously. But he also is he's very insulting, and he won't develop his criteria. He won't he won't explain his basis. He keeps using biology words for consciousness or mind or sapiency, definitions of humanity. And it's not even that he's trying to define humanity based on anything like what the question of humanity in moral sense. It's solely on a mechanical, behavioral basis. There is a set of behaviors that defines humanity, and if you don't make those behaviors, you're not human. And this is going to bring us back into one of the core questions about the abortion debate. But man, I run into people like this, and they usually claim to be scientific, very big on science. Sometimes that's libertarian, sometimes it's woke, sometimes it's progressive, but they're very big on science. However, they tend to not understand any science outside of the 19th century single variable mechanical model of science. And if you know what I mean, you're going to just say, oh yeah, I know what you mean. And that's the non-systemic, single variable in isolation is the only way you can research something, double-blind controlled study with one variable and everything else is controlled for and the whole universe is perfect and so on and so forth. And it's mechanistic, very mechanistic. These people don't do a good job with anything that is more complicated, especially when it gets into psychology. Even biology is too complicated for them, okay? When you get into human physiology, there's things, we discover things constantly. We know that things happen and we don't know why. And these are the kinds of people who deny the existence of results until they have authority-defined causes. They're not good enough to handle advanced biology, human physiology. And psychology is just way beyond them, okay? The consciousness studies is not something they're ever going to be able to grasp. They are very mechanistic. and everything has to be mechanical. A lot of them tend to be libertarians of a particular type, because libertarianism tends to like the idea of very simple, linear, universal logics. Like it's a faith kind of system in that way. That anything complicated and messy just kind of doesn't go. They try to argue it out of existence. Like reality doesn't exist because the ideal is a simple, linear, logical flow. But that's not to say that there aren't lots of libertarians, especially when you get into grown-up voluntarists, mature voluntarists. There's plenty of them who understand the messiness of humanity. Okay, humans are not neat, linear, logical creatures. But there's a branch of libertarian. It's a fairly large and publicly viewable branch of libertarianism, which is very, very stuck in this whole idea, and it's very religious. They don't want to sound religious or think of themselves as religious, but it's very religious in general. So he's got a couple. He's helped us out here, okay. Even though he's never going to be able to help himself out of the hole he's in, because while the guy talks like a 12-year-old boy who's just read Ayn Rand for the first time and hasn't thought about it, his profile, it looks like he's in his 50s. So, ain't going very far with that one. Wow. Poor guy. So let's talk about abortion. What is the problem with abortion? The problem with abortion is that it is fundamentally a question of human rights. And for the people who think that that only means a woman's right to choose, they've denied the possibility that there is a human rights debate involving fetuses. That's a really dangerous spot to be in, okay? There's a whole lot of problems with that. So my primary problem with an ill-defined system of abortion or set of requirements for abortion is that your society is put in a very dangerous and evil position when your society is determining humanity, determining what human, physiologically human creatures are and are not human. Okay, and there, you can see that this develops. That this is not a slippery slope. This is a chain of consequences. This is what a slippery slope is when it's real. Okay, not a fallacy. You go from, we need to be able to handle it in the first trimester. It's just important to the safety of everyone. It's a privacy thing, and it should be safe and legal and rare because it's an unfortunate thing. And it progresses over a couple of decades to you're in labor and you've decided that the mental anguish is too much, you can abort now. That's way, way overboard. And I'm not exaggerating with that. People have actually advocated. I know that the Virginia governor probably didn't realize that he was publicly advocating that. I think he's okay with it. Like, morally, his morals are okay with post-birth abortions, but that's actually a thing. It's not a thing where you can't find it in publications because it's some weird university think tank or something. It's real, okay? It's right there. Post-birth abortion is actually a thing now, okay? You go into labor, the baby crowns, you're like, oh crap. There's evidence of Down syndrome when we missed it in the test. Cut off the baby. Like, that level of stuff is here. It's right now, okay? Slippery slope, chain of consequences. It's a problem for your society when you start going down this road of defining humanity for your advantage, for your comfort level. I understand that there are a few thousand cases of incest rape leading to pregnancy every year. This is not what we're talking about, okay? This is not the broad definition of the abortion debate. And even if it were, you catch it early, you deal with it. It's not, it doesn't, if it's too late, it's too late. You're dealing with a human being. There's the fetus is human. There's a human being. But back to the actual point here in this segment is that pregnancy is a choice. It's a choice of action. It's a consequence of free choice. Most people who get pregnant now, who have abortions, the vast majority, and we're talking well over 98%, are consenting to have sex. They are willingly having sex. They are willingly using or not using prophylactics. They know that there's a risk. There is education out there right now. If you bang, you can get pregnant. This is common knowledge. This is educated knowledge. This is taught knowledge. People are told this. Okay, it's not like, oh, I didn't know. I didn't know if I banged my boyfriend I could get pregnant. That's not how this works, okay? It's not what's going on. So it's a choice. And the consequences are inconvenient. So we are defining humanity on a social level for convenience. We're defining people, potential people, whatever. We're defining human organisms as not human, not people, not having rights for convenience. That's a very dangerous place for your society to be in. The social question of, can we afford that level of inhumanity, that level of self-centered inhumanity? I can't describe it any other way. Can we afford that and maintain a society that's worth having? That's a big question, okay? It's a big question. Number 2, what if you're wrong? So this is a deep moral question, not just the effects, okay? The first argument is somewhat, I mean, you could almost call it utilitarianism. As much as I hate utilitarianism, it's how does this affect your society? What does this do to your society? But the second question here is an actual moral question. What if you are wrong? What if your definition of humanity, whether it's this idiot's 3-year-old self-awareness test in the mirror crap, or the common biological reaction to pain. Reaction to a pain stimulus is a common medical or biological definition of a life form. Okay, what if you're wrong though? What if it's before that? Like, where is it? I am personally fairly comfortable with 6 to 8 weeks. I'm not positive though, okay, and I can't, I'm not going to get too butthurt about that because I've put a fair amount of thinking, research, learning, meditating into this, and I really feel like somewhere in that 6 to 8 weeks, you're in that's where you're going to cross the line. I don't think 12 weeks is reasonable for abortion. I think at that point you are in fact killing a human. I am absolutely positive that at 16 weeks you are killing a human being. 20 weeks, 24 weeks, And if you're killing a human being, then you are denying them human rights. You are committing murder. It's not, and that's not a woman's right to choose question. It's literally a question of committing murder. Yes, that human being is dependent on the mother. It's in the womb. And for the next several months, that's going to have a serious impact on the life of the mother. That's absolutely true. We have that problem in society in a lot of ways. Usually it's not inside your body, but we do in fact have that problem in society. And the left, the progressives, the same people who are arguing for post-birth abortions will tell you constantly that you have responsibilities to other people, that you have social responsibilities, that you have to suck it up and hurt a little bit because of disadvantaged people. Like, your rights are restricted because of the needs of others. Okay, that sounds like pregnancy to me. Your rights are restricted for a period of time because of the needs of another. What's really interesting is that pregnancy ends and progressivism doesn't. So, bang! I have to get my little thing in there. That's about it right now. I'll continue this later. Stay sideways and stay alive.